1985. Year Freddie Rock Live Aid.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine?
Marty went back to the future.
Out of a DeLorean?
And Levi 501 started dominating the music charts.
If seeing is believing, sound is unbelievable.
A few years ago, I wrote a blog post titled 1985, the year I started listening, which I'll link below. And in that blog post, I talk about being 11 years old and how significant that year was in terms of me understanding music and paying attention. And those drivers were Live Aid, they were going to the movies, and they were, in particular, Levi's 501s, and that first ad using Marvin Gaye. Now, Levi's developed a whole strategy that then went on. They did the soul stuff with Percy Sledge, then they went into the blues with Muddy Waters, Screaming Jay Hawkins, and then into rock and Steve Miller Band, The Clash, T-Rex. During that 80s and 90s period, they had no less than 7 number ones, but pretty much all of these tracks charted at a time when being in the charts was a big thing. Then by 1994, after almost a decade of success, BBH needed a bit of a change of strategy, and it was shortly after the tragic death of Kurt Cobain, and they launched Creek. So the story goes that BBH went to Peter Lawler, who had a studio in Soho, just around the corner from them. And he had this riff that sounded really grungy and perfect, but he didn't have the rest of the track. He played all of the instruments on that track, and he had to create the band Stiltskin, essentially, to go and play on Top of the Pops. And this shift where you could then not just take great tracks from the past, but actually launch new music, was a significant player for BBH. And I suppose the pinnacle of that was perhaps the number one that they got for Babylon Zoo with Spaceman.
You love it, you just keep buying it, and you've made it the fastest selling debut single of all time. That's right, with its 4th week at number 1, Babylon Zoo are Top of the Pops.
But the key with this track is that the start of it was actually a remix by Arthur Baker, who I kind of met when he was working on XFM and also from Style and Social in Notting Hill. And that was the only bit that people liked. So it really, when you bought the track and you realised that actually the first 15 seconds was the best bit, the only bit, the rest of the career of Babylon Zoo didn't really last too long. But it did change how people perceive the use of music in advertising, and that's why I wanted to cover it in this episode. And the real genius of this strategy is that the radio airplay as well, not only getting onto the BBC, so getting on to Top of the Pops, but also getting into the chart shows and having DJs across the country, whether commercial or BBC, saying, here's the new latest number one, and often saying it was the Levi's track. That radically changed how everyone saw how music could be used within advertising. Anyone who's seen one of my presentations will know that I talk about the birth of music coming from language, because the way that we say things, when we are more emotional, we increase our volume, intonation, and rhythm. So we end up singing to one another. So that link between spoken language and music is fundamental to how human beings communicate, which is why music and brands and advertising will always live together. And I suppose the modern day equivalent of that is things going viral on TikTok. And that's precisely why music is used in that way, and why that as a social network is so powerful, because of the use of music and that link to human emotions.
Okay, I like it, Picasso.